In this video, I'll be helping you with the ALEKS problem type called factoring a product of a quadratic trinomial and a monomial. In this example, we're asked to factor completely 2y to the fourth plus 24y to the third plus 72y squared. And for this problem type, we'll be able to factor out a monomial, which means that each of these three terms will have a common factor that we can then factor out as our first step. Starting with the coefficients, I can see that these are all even. So my common factor for the coefficients will be 2. That's the greatest common factor of 2, 24, and 72. And then looking at the variable portions, they all have y's. So my common factor will include a y. And I notice that they all have at least 2 y's. So the greatest common factor for the variable y is y squared. And now that I've identified the greatest common factor for these three terms, my first step will be to remove that greatest common factor, 2y squared. And to determine what our remaining terms are inside the parentheses after factoring out the 2y squared, I can take each of these terms. I'll start with the 2y to the fourth, and factoring out the 2y squared has the result of just dividing that term by 2y squared. This will simplify to just y to the power of 4 minus 2, or 2. So y squared remains from that first term. For the second term, we had 24y to the third. We're again factoring out the 2y squared. Here, 2 goes into 24 12 times, so our coefficient is 12. And for the y's, we have y3 in the numerator, y2 in the denominator. So 3 minus 2 would just be 1. The sign here is positive, so plus 12y. And then the last term, we have 72y squared, factoring out a 2y squared. 2 goes into 72 36 times, so our coefficient is 36, and the y squareds completely cancel, so our last term is only that 36. So we have factored out a monomial, which was the greatest common factor for our original trinomial, but we're told to factor completely. So if possible, we need to continue by factoring the trinomial in the parentheses, and we should be able to recognize the trinomial in the parentheses as a perfect square trinomial, which has the form a squared plus or minus 2ab plus b squared. And when we have that form, we know that it will factor as a plus or minus b quantity squared. This is a perfect square trinomial, so we'll be able to factor it as a perfect square. In this example, y is our first term being squared. The last term is also a perfect square. 36 is 6 squared, so b would be 6. And the sign is always the same as the middle term. Our middle term was positive, so we will have plus. The first term is y, the second term is 6. This is now completely factored, and we did it in 2 steps. First by factoring out the greatest common factor, 2y squared, and then recognizing the trinomial as a perfect square trinomial, we used that form to factor it as a perfect square.